The Emperor is dead. The opening to House of the Dying Sun is ominous, but it's a lead-in to an extremely good space game. Now, this one released way back in 2016, however, it's certainly flown under a lot of people's radar. Now, I recently decided to take another look at it and suddenly realised that it has been a long while since I made a video in my Best Space Game Ever series. It's a series that goes back a few years, and one where I take a look at various space games throughout the ages, whether it's from the 80s, 90s or modern day. It's a long journey then through the history of space games, looking for the ideal space game and asking one very specific question: could this be a contender for the best space game ever? So then, House of the Dying Sun is a space game combat simulator developed and published by Marauder Interactive. The game puts players in the role of a skilled fighter pilot serving as an executor for the Imperial Army in a distant space empire. The story, whilst minimal, sets the stage for the action. The Emperor has been assassinated in a coup, and the player is charged with hunting down and eliminating the traitors responsible for the murder. The narrative is conveyed through brief mission descriptions and flavour text, allowing for the game to focus on its core gameplay: fast-paced, intense space dogfighting. Players pilot an interceptor that is a highly manoeuvrable and deadly spacecraft, very much reminiscent of the Colonial Viper Mark II from Battlestar Galactica, the remake. The interceptor comes equipped with customizable primary weapons, a single heavy-use weapon for bombing runs, and a drift ability that allows pilots to decouple their movement from their aiming. This is very much in the case of Newtonian physics then. So all that really does help and enable advanced combat techniques. So House of the Dying Sun features 14 handcrafted missions, each with its own objectives and challenges. These missions range from escorting friendly ships and eliminating high-priority targets to surviving relentless waves of enemy fighters. The mission variety keeps the gameplay engaging, demanding players to adapt their strategies and tactics to succeed. And this is something that really did push my skill as a games player, to be perfectly honest. I died many times before succeeding on some of these missions, so whilst 14 missions might not seem that many, there's a lot of replayability here, and some of these missions, at least for me, were especially challenging. And that really leads into one of the game's standout features, which is its difficulty system. Each mission can be attempted on one of the 3 difficulty levels, with higher difficulties increasing the number, firepower and durability of enemy ships. This scaling difficulty ensures that the game remains challenging and rewarding for all players. Now, completing missions and bonus objectives rewards players with to unlock new weapons, perks and ships for their fleet. And yeah, a fleet is very much a huge focus of this game. You see, you don't just pilot a single ship, but instead have a fleet of combat-focused ships. As players progress through the game, their fleet expands to include additional interceptors, destroyers, and even a formidable frigate. This progression system adds a sense of accomplishment and provides players with more tools to tackle the increasingly difficult missions. In addition to the immersive first-person cockpit view then, kind of touched on this with the size of the fleet, House of the Dying Sun features a tactical view that allows players to pause the action, survey the battlefield, issue orders to their squad mates, and switch control between ships. You can actually pretty much fly any ship in the game from first person and switch between these in real time. This tactical layer really does add some depth to the gameplay, encouraging players to think strategically and coordinate their fleet's actions to overcome the odds. In some ways, you can think of it as a RTS game with the ability to jump into any ship from first person. But that said, whilst the tactical view is certainly a very welcome addition and makes House of the Dying Sun somewhat unique amongst the space combat genre, I did from time to time find it somewhat cumbersome to use effectively. Issuing precise commands and quickly identifying targets can certainly be a bit of a challenge, especially in the heat of battle. However, this is a relatively minor issue, and ultimately it doesn't detract from the significance of the overall experience. Alongside the main missions, House of the Dying Sun includes a challenge mode that pits players against endless waves of increasingly difficult enemies. This mode offers a more arcade-like experience, allowing players to test their skills and push the limits without the constraints of mission objectives. Another thing I know many of you will likely be quite happy to hear is that House of the Dying Sun can be a very immersive space-based experience, and that's because it is VR compatible. The game's VR implementation is exceptionally well executed, After all, there's nothing quite like sitting in a cockpit and really getting a feel for fast action-based combat. Visually, House of the Dying Sun opts for a clean and almost cel-shaded aesthetic that prioritises clarity and readability over complex photorealistic graphics. The visuals then really do work very well with the style of the gameplay on offer. The audio is also very impressive. There's satisfying weapon sounds, atmospheric background noises, not to mention an epic drum-driven soundtrack that perfectly complements the intense action. But that said, despite its many strengths, House of the Dying Sun's main drawback is its relatively short length. With only 14 missions, it's very easy to find yourself completing the game in a matter of hours. However, the higher difficulty levels and the drive to perfect one's performance somewhat compensate for this, allowing you to revisit the missions and some replayability there. Another minor issue is a lack of depth in the game's fleet management system. Whilst players can acquire veteran ships that perform better in battle, there's little opportunity to form a meaningful attachment to these vessels. Allowing players to customize their ship's appearance or assign unique traits, for example, really could help foster a greater sense of ownership and investment in your fleet. In conclusion then, House of the Dying Sun really is a remarkable achievement in the space combat genre. Its tight, responsive gameplay, challenging missions and immersive atmosphere combine to create an unforgettable experience that really does evoke memories of classic games like TIE Fighter and Free Space. The game really does have a focused design with striking visuals and exceptional audio, and it all works together to create a great game. Ultimately then, House of the Dying Sun certainly is a contender for one of the best space games ever. However, its relatively short time really does knock it down a few notches. Yet, if that's not something that bothers you and instead you're looking for a fantastic space-focused experience, then House of the Dying Sun really is a game to try out. So thanks for watching all the way to the end here. If you're still around, then why not check out one of the other videos on the screen right here. Thanks for watching, and take care.